Alright. Hello, everybody. How's it going? You guys ready for some story time? Good, because I got my book ready. Woo! Alright. Welcome, everybody, to my second rendition here of reading my story, mine and Juicebox, if he shows up here in chat. Something we've been working together on for over a decade. A long time. Anyway, Kingdom Hearts Anime AU. For those of you who are new here, like H0SS00312, hopefully not a bot, welcome. We are continuing the reading of my Kingdom Hearts Anime Alternate Universe. Wow! Anime Alternate Universe meaning basically Disney is replaced by anime. Where we left off so far is that the protagonist, who is conveniently named Minami, was her world was overthrown with darkness, and she found herself in the foreign land of Amestris. And she met the Elric brothers, Edward and Alphonse, and she's just trying to get a grasp on reality. Her best friend is missing. She doesn't know where he went. Kai, where's Kai? Hopefully we'll find out in today's reading. Spoiler alert, we will. So, yeah, without further ado, I think it's time that I put on the copyrighted music and we just get going here. All right. Also, chat, please let me know if the music's too loud or not loud enough. You know the drill. Anyways, boom. Okay, there we go. Okay. Minami walked with the Elric brothers through Central City, noticing how different it was from her home. Everything looked significantly older, like she had dropped into the 1920s era, and yet they had the spaceships? The music's fine for now? Great, thank you. Are you hungry, Minami? Al asked. Maybe there's some place we can take you to eat. Don't worry, we'll happily pay for it. Minami didn't answer. He was still feeling guilty about the way she treated these boys earlier, and yet they still stood up for her, to the leader of their country no less. Why were they being so nice? Well, it wasn't like the boy in the armor wasn't nice at any point, other than when he shoved me inside his armor like a rag doll, she thought to herself. You okay, Minami? Huh? Minami snapped out of her thoughts to see the armored boy looking down at her. I'm sorry, Booster, you know exactly what this is. I'm sorry. She awkwardly looked away. I guess I could eat. I'd ask what you're in the mood for, but for all I know, we might not have the same food that you had on your world, Edward spoke. He continued speaking, but Minami got distracted at the sight of a pair of street vendors. One of them seemed to be a small child, while the other seemed to be an older woman. They were selling some items that looked familiar. And it clicked in Minami's head. Those items looked like what she and Kai saw at that antique tent back at the carnival. Excuse me. Yet the vendors didn't look like the people she saw before. They had different hair and clothes. The boy also had large glasses, while the woman had freckles. Minami had absent-mindedly stopped walking to stare at the vendors. After a few steps, Ed now noticed that Minami had stopped and looked back at her. Hello? Ed walked back to her, before following her gaze and seeing the vendors. What is it? Shh! Ed's face twisted. What do you mean, shh? I mean, shh! Minami held her finger to her lips before looking back at the vendors. Jeez. Ed crossed his arms and let out a huff. How hard did she hit your head in your armor, Al? Enough to give her a mild concussion? Al squeaked. Minami didn't hear them. She was too focused on watching the street vendors, seeing that they were starting to break down their table. They packed away their merch and rolled up their carpet before walking down the street. Her eyes narrowed at the sight of them walking into an alleyway. Minami, Al whispered. Is something wrong? It's just some street vendors selling junk, Ed huffed again. Trust me, you don't want what they got. Minami didn't respond, but suddenly went to jog across the street. Hey! Ed called for her, and then glanced at his brother before they both went to follow. Minami made it across the street and walked up to the entrance of the alleyway. She peeked around the corner to see the vendors a few feet away. The boy was taking off his glasses, while the woman was wiping her face on a cloth. It was exactly as Minami thought. They were in disguise, and she knew who they were right away. Something wrong, Fletcher? We didn't make as much as I hoped we would. I don't think this is going to be enough to feed all of us. Well, I could always just lure in a sweet delivery boy. Or disguise you as one. You'd be adorable. No, that's going too far, Clara. But we might not have much of a choice. Desperate times call for desperate measures, my dear brother. Minami's eyes widened at the sight of an even more familiar boy, Russell. He stepped toward his brother and his comrade, followed by the 2 other women Minami saw at her carnival. Unfortunately, we didn't have much luck either, the girl with the pink hair, Rose, spoke. Since we lost almost everything back on that other world. Speak for yourselves, the gauntlet girl sneered and pulled out a wallet from her pocket. Dinner's on me tonight. Or rather, she opened the wallet to look at their identification. It's on Mario Bermudez. Not bad, Russell smiled at her. Nina, you promised you stopped doing that, Fletcher cried. You gotta be kidding me. Minami heard Ed speak from behind her. She glanced behind her to see Ed now looking around the corner with her. That guy again? I guess they formed a gang since... Al trailed off. Wait, is that Rose? Why is she with them? Minami blinked in surprise, but then shook her head. This was her chance to get some answers. She then went to run out of hiding down the alleyway. Ah! Ed flinched. What is she? Hey! Russell! Minami stopped in front of the group, glaring up at Russell with her hands clenched. Russell's eyes widened. You're alive? He, as well as the rest of the group, all seemed shocked to see Minami. And you're still the same rotten cheat from last time, Ed yelled, as he and Al followed Minami into the alleyway. I'm glad to see that you were able to escape, Minami, Russell sighed in relief, seemingly ignoring the Elric brothers. So, still got our antique? Minami frowned, unamused by Russell's comment. Wait, Al blinked. Minami, you know him too? I sure do, Minami growled. He's the reason I have the Keyblade in the first place. Huh? The Elric brothers gasped. So, you gonna give it back? Panina asked, placing a hand on her hip. Minami shot her a glare. Says the chick who's holding a stolen wallet. And your point is? Panina turned her head to avoid Minami's eyes. Minami rolled her eyes and then pointed to Russell. You said that you'd tell me everything you know if we made it out of there, so it's time for answers. Wait, what do you mean he's the reason you have the Keyblade? Ed interjected. Did he give it to you? Al inquired. Not exactly, Russell shook his head. If anything, Minami here ended up snatching it up for herself, in a sense. Hi, Holy Spokes, welcome. I did not! Minami stomped her foot. We were merely traveling with that Keyblade as part of our display. She apparently got too close and found it in her hand. Where the hell did you find a Keyblade? Ed snapped at Russell. You're aware that the universe is on the brink of being swallowed by darkness, and you're showing off a Keyblade at a freaking carnivals? It's valuable, Russell shrugged his shoulders, his dismissiveness making Ed growl. Anyway, she may not have chosen the Keyblade. Oh, I'm sorry. This is way too high up. There we go. She may not have chosen the Keyblade, but it most certainly chose her. Either way, we're just glad that she made it out alive, Rose spoke, then smiled sheepishly at the sight of Ed. Oh, hi, Edward. And of course I gotta ask why you're hanging out with these guys now, Ed raised an eyebrow. I'm just taking your advice, Rose said quietly. You told me I have a strong pair of legs and that I should use them, so that's exactly what I did. To join a bunch of thieves and con artists? Ed exasperated. Are you crazy? I don't see why you're so mad, Edward. Clara smirked. We're taking really good care of her. Why do I find that hard to believe? Ed gritted his teeth. Tell me, Minami spoke up. If I never went inside your tent, none of this would have happened, right? My home wouldn't have been destroyed. Kai wouldn't have been... She trailed off, unable to finish her sentence. She could only grit her teeth and glare down to her feet and clench her fists tightly. Minami, I can assure you that we're not responsible for what happened to your world, Russell replied, his face somber. He's right, Fletcher spoke up. The Heartless consume worlds and envelop them in darkness. In fact, me and my brother lost our home because of the Heartless. Minami looked back up at them, eyes wide with surprise. We've been fighting Heartless for years, Ed explained. I hate to say it, but even if those guys never came to your world, the Heartless would have come anyway. Exactly, Panina shrugged her shoulders. If anything, you should be thanking us, especially since you took our merchandise. You're welcome, by the way. That comment made Minami's face twist into a scowl. I have nothing to thank you for, she snapped. I didn't even want it. Where did you people even get it? If I really am the chosen one for it, why did it wait until now, after who knows how many worlds were consumed, before coming to me? Minami, Al tried to interject. Hi, Kuma, thanks for the lurk. I have no idea what I'm doing, Minami gritted her teeth, and now I'm expected to just rise up and be some kind of hero, when I couldn't even save my friend? Silence rang through the alleyway after Minami's outbursts. Ed now looked to their feet sadly, but Russell looked bewildered. Wait, he whispered. You mean you didn't see him escape? Minami's eyes went wide, and her mouth dropped open. Escape? Al gasped. Hold on. Are you implying you saw him get away? That's impossible, Ed shook his head. I was right there. We saw him get swept away by those Heartless. There's no way he stayed on that world, and Russell insisted. Not after what I saw while I was escaping with the others. Suddenly, Minami lunged forward at Russell. By the time everyone could react, Minami had already grabbed Russell by the shirt collar with both hands and turned the both of them so that she could pin him against the wall. Brother! Fletcher cried. Penina and Clara immediately readied themselves to attack. Ed now noticed this and were getting ready to defend. But Russell had raised a hand to Penina and Clara, silently signaling to them to stand down. He didn't take his eyes off of Minami's. He saw the hurt in her eyes. He felt the trembling of her hands holding him down. He knew that she wasn't going to hurt him. She was just desperate. Minami let out a shaky breath. What did you see? Please. Russell began to explain. Flashback time! Kai looked from the corner of his eye and saw the two strangers with Minami. Who were they? And where did they come from? My numbers! Just then, he was swept up by the tendril. The shadows were gripping and holding his body as they flung him into the air and pulled him into their main body. Kai tried reaching out for Minami, but he was sucked inside, crying out for her. Minami! Kai! Minami tried reaching as well, but with the armor holding her back, she couldn't reach him. Al! Restrain her! We need to go! Now! A voice yelled. What? Minami shrieked. I'm sorry for what I'm about to do, but... The armor suddenly opened his chest plate and forced Minami inside before closing up. The two boys then started to run away from the tornado, the blonde leading the way. Kai saw this happen from inside the shadowy tornado, his eyes wide. Fun fact, I was actually this Minami as my VTuber persona before revealing my true identity as a goddess. So yes, I did use my actual name. If anything, this version of me came after, as far as the rest of you are concerned. When you said it was cringe and you inserted yourself, I didn't know you used the name. I sure did. So, hold on. Okay, at the end of this chapter, I'll show you guys what my variant looks like, if you will. Where did I? Okay, Kai saw this happen from inside the shadowy tornado, his eyes wide. No, they're kidnapping her. He struggled in the darkness. Wait, stop, Mana! Kai was pulled into the tornado and enveloped in darkness before he could scream Minami's name one last time. He struggled inside the swarm of Heartless, trying his best to push them aside or rip them off as they crowded his vision. No matter how many he pushed aside, no matter how hard he fought... I just immediately lost my place. There we go! No matter how far he managed to crawl out, he was always pulled back in. He could only see the outside world through a narrow opening through the middle of the Heartless. But then, he saw what looked like a rocket ship, blasting off high into the sky. But where did that come from? He put two and two together. Those strangers took Minami aboard that ship, and now she was gone. He could only watch as it flew off into the sky and disappeared behind the black storm clouds, and his eyes filled with tears as his heart broke. He stopped fighting. He let the Heartless grab onto him and pull him into the darkness as the opening he watched from closed. Before he felt an overwhelming fear, but now he just felt an overwhelming loneliness, an overpowering loneliness, leaving him completely hollow. However, that emptiness soon began to fade, and was replaced with another feeling that slowly consumed him. Rage. Kai then began to struggle once more, ripping the Heartless off of him with unbridled rage, which made him begin to actually start struggling. I lost her because I was too weak, and now I'm going to die! Damn it! Why did it have to be like this? Why am I so useless? Why? I hate this. I hate myself. And I hate all of you! Kai's eyes suddenly began glowing red, as something was triggered inside him. Russell Tringham was leading his group to the ship, before he heard screams. He turned his head to see where it had come from, freezing in his tracks at the sight of a giant Heartless tornado. Just then, the tornado began to inflate from within, as if something was making it overflow from inside. Boom! The tornado exploded in a massive shockwave of darkness. Russell was nearly blown away by the blast, but he looked up to see someone familiar, floating several feet in the air. It was Kai, but his body was emitting an eerie dark aura, which dispersed after a few moments. His clothes were torn, and his body looked limp, but it was Kai's expression that really concerned Russell. He had such a blank, emotionless look on his face. His eyes fell shut as he lost consciousness, and his limp body began to plummet to the ground. Before Russell could go after him, the Heartless had cut him off. Damn! But then he saw someone appear below Kai and catch him in their arms. It was a woman. She had long and wavy black hair and was wearing a matching black dress. He couldn't get a good look at her face as she turned away. Hey! Russell yelled for her as he saw her walk towards a vortex of darkness. Hold it right there! But she didn't even turn to acknowledge Russell. She just stepped in that vortex, and then it closed behind her. Russell growled in frustration, but he had no more time to waste. He then ran to meet the rest of his group at their own ship, so that they could escape. And that's the last I saw of him, Russell concluded his story. We ended up coming here because, well, it's one of the few places where we know we'd be safe, even if some of us do have a bit of a record here. Is that all true? Al whispered. I have no reason to lie, Russell said coolly, despite still being pinned against the wall by Minami. I know what I saw. That woman carried your friend off before your world was consumed. I don't know where he is, but he definitely got away. Minami, who had been looking into Russell's eyes for the entire duration of his story, finally broke the eye contact and slowly looked down to her feet. Her hand slowly unclenched and released his collar, and she staggered backwards on shaky legs, until her back hit the wall across from the one she had pinned Russell on. Minami! Al took a step towards her, watching as she slid her back down the wall until she was now sitting on the ground. I'm okay, she whispered, lifting her knees so that she could prop her elbows on them and hold her head in her palms. He's alive. Her voice was shaky. Kai's alive. In that moment, everyone saw the tears rolling down her cheeks from under her palms. At the very least, Al thought to himself, it's a relief that her friend is alive. Hold on a second, Ed spoke up, his voice serious. I didn't forget that I want to know where you got a Keyblade in the first place, Russell. While exploring other worlds for some new things to add to our shop, I came across a rather barren world, Russell explained, as he fixed his shirt and turned to face the Elric brothers. There was a city in ruin, and among all the wreckage was a perfectly preserved Keyblade, like I'd leave without taking it. The thing was a dud anyway, or so we thought at the time, Panina added, shrugging her shoulders. Even Rose didn't feel anything when she touched it. Honestly, we had the thought that it might not even be genuine. But still, why didn't you turn it into the military? Al asked. They didn't say anything about a monetary reward, now did they? Clara answered, a sly smile on her lips. Besides, we figured it wasn't the real deal, and we could have been punished for trying to scam the military for all we knew. Gotta love all yelling in caps and fanfics. So, yeah, the storybook graphic implies that I physically wrote all this story out. I mean, I physically typed it several times. Solus, I don't think you were here yet, but, hello, I'm a Juicebox. You've probably seen him around in chat. We wrote this story together, so I had created Minami while he had created Kai. God, 2007 was when this whole project began. So, it started as a roleplay, in which I then took it and, I guess, converted it to, like, a novel style for... It is a collab fic, yes. If anything, it's a collab roleplay, and then I edit it to be a novel-type story. Excuse me. A roleplay collab fic, you got it, baby. Yes, this project started in 2007 to give perspective, and it has been going ever since. So... There's a lot of work that went into this, so, you know, it's cringe, it's fine. I'm proud of it, though. It's something we've, you know, it means a lot to me. Anyway, where do we leave off? Okay. Ed sighed heavily. Knowing the reputation of most of you guys, I'm not convinced, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to take your word for it. Al looked back down to Minami, seeing her wipe her hands with her wrists. I'm sorry, wiping her eyes with her wrists. I still don't understand all this mumbo-jumbo about Keyblades and wielders, she said quietly. But if Kai is alive, and he really is somewhere out there, maybe this Keyblade can help me find him. Minami put her hand on the wall so that she could push herself to stand up once more. Her eyes were red and puffy, but there were no tears. I really didn't think I'd ever be saying this to you, but... She let out a heavy sigh. Thank you. At least for the information. You're welcome, Russell nodded. And hey, my offer to join us is still open. We could definitely use some of your skills. No way, Ed yelled. It's our responsibility to watch after her, and we're not going to let her join some group of no-good thieves and con artists. She has more important things to do. Thieves and con artists is such a harsh word, Clara frowned. I'd describe us more as traveling entrepreneurs. I don't care what you call yourselves. I'm not joining you, Manami crossed her arms. I see, Russell sighed. Well, if being a chosen one doesn't work out, we'll always have an open spot just for you, Manami. We intend to keep moving forward, but if we ever bump into you again, we'll be happy to share any interesting information. For a price, of course, Panina grinned. Panina, Fletcher whined. Fine, you get a discount. Panina crossed her arms and huffed. Manami couldn't help but crack a small, uncomfortable smile in response. They then waved goodbye before walking out of the alleyway and down the sidewalk in silence. Manami had been contemplating saying something for a while, but as soon as she opened her mouth, Ed spoke first. Man, I can't believe that guy. First he never stopped stealing, now he's trying to manipulate Manami. Are you still mad about the time him and his brother stole our identities? Al asked. Or the time he punched you in the face? Or all the times he called you short? Damn right! Ed screeched, stopping Al from saying the forbidden word. And now it's even worse because he's teamed up with that lying thief who duped us, and then that pickpocket who stole my watch. It's like a freaking nightmare! Well, Al looked up and thought, you seem to be taking good care of Rose, and she's never done anything bad to us. No, but they might be yanking her along to exploit her power like Cornello did, Ed sighed heavily. Al perked up, realizing that he and his brother were talking, but Manami was very quiet. He glanced back to make sure she was still there. You okay, Manami? He asked. Manami slowly came to a stop, her eyes glued to her feet. If you got something to say, just say it, Ed said, matter-of-factly. Manami then went to take a deep breath. I think I owe you guys a thank you, too, along with an apology. Huh? Both Ed and Al exchanged glances, as Manami continued. We had a rough start, but, I mean, at the end of it all, you guys saved me. Even if it was because of the key sword. Keyblade, Al corrected her politely. Yeah, that, Manami nodded, and then let out a sigh. I was kind of a jerk. You smacked me in the face with your hair, Ed frowned at her. Right, I was a lot of a jerk, Manami corrected herself. And I'm sorry. It's fine, Manami, really, Al replied quickly. Me and brother never held anything against you. We understand that you're going through a lot. All of this is a lot to take in. Ed kept his frown for a moment, but then let out a sigh before giving her a small smile. It's all good between us, he said. I'm actually surprised that you came around this quickly. Really? Manami chuckled nervously. Because I don't feel like I still haven't come around to much of anything. But, hey, we might as well be on good terms if you're gonna have to be stuck with me. She then smiled. Ed, she looked to Al first. And Al, she looked to Ed. Thanks. Huh? Suit of armor blinked. What? Manami blinked as well. Those are your names, right? She pointed to Ed. Al. And then she pointed to Al. And Ed, the Full Metal Alchemist. Ed and Al stared at her for a long moment, making her start to feel uncomfortable. What? She asked nervously. You guys are freaking me out. Ed had clenched his fist tightly, muttering under his breath through gritted teeth. This again? Really? You'd think after all these years, people would stop making that mistake. You got it mixed up, Al stammered nervously. I'm not Edward, he is. I'm Alphonse, he explained. Don't worry. It's a common mistake. A mistake I'm tired of! Ed burst out, making Manami jump. Okay. Ed quickly ran a hand through his bangs. Let's put an end to that confusion right now. That title belongs to me. There's only one Full Metal Alchemist, and it's this guy right here. Edward Elric. Alphonse is my little brother. I'm the big brother. Got it? Yeah, Manami said, while swallowing down the urge to snap back at him for being rude. After all, she had just apologized for treating them badly, to where she almost felt like she deserved a little bit of attitude back from him. Still, getting yelled at didn't feel too good, and she couldn't help but frown. Brother, please, Al whined. She's not from our world, remember? There's no way your reputation would spread that far either. Don't worry, I got it, Minami said sharply. It won't happen again. There was a short moment of awkward silence, but before either of the Elric brothers could say anything else, Minami changed the subject. So, can we go to what's-his-name's house now? Yeah, Al nodded. Mr. Hughes would probably be heading home soon. Let's make our way over to his house, Ed turned to walk, Al quick to follow him. Minami followed as well, a few paces behind. I'm ready for bed. Oh no, not Hughes! Key-shaped bludgeoning instrument. Also, yeah, this is an example of, like, when we would just do silly things in the roleplay, and I just decided to add them as bloopers. So, Kai, hey, Russell, how did you get a harem of 3 girls? Russell, who said they're mine? Fletcher walks into the room. Fletcher, ladies. So, I thought it'd be funny to add them into the document itself. Anyway, Chapter 5. Mr. Hughes and his family are very nice, Al explained to Minami as they walked down the streets of Central. I know it's not quite home, but he seems to be able to make it feel like a second one at least, he added, with a smile in his voice. At least for Brother and I. Yeah, Ed nodded in agreement. He's a little over the top, but he's one of the few people in the military I know we can count on. I see. Minami looked up to see that the 3 of them were approaching an estate, and she saw none other than Maze Hughes waiting out for them out front. Standing next to him was a woman and a young girl, who she assumed were his wife and daughter. Hey there, Minami! Maze greeted her. Just in time. My family and I were expecting you. Isn't that right, my little Alicia? Hey, it's little brother! The little girl pointed to Head. And big brother! She then pointed to Al. She then looked to Minami and raised a brow in curiosity. She looked down to her hands and held up fingers as she began to count aloud. 1, 2, 3? She looked back up at Minami in wonderment and blinked. Hello, Minami offered a small smile and went down to crouch down so that she could look at the little girl at eye level. My name is Minami. Big sister! The little girl squealed. Minami blinked in surprise at the girl's sudden outburst, and then found that she couldn't help but smile. Doesn't she just melt your heart? May swooned. I swear, she's so precious that even after the hardest of days, her little smile can brighten anyone's life. Welcome to our home, Minami. My name is Gracia, Maze's wife introduced herself as Minami went to stand back up. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Minami bowed her head politely. And welcome back, Edward and Alphonse. Gracia smiled to the Elric brothers. My, have you gotten taller, Edward? Ed's eyes lit up from such a compliment, but Al knew, in reality, he hadn't gotten any taller. It was just that the little cowlick of hair on the top of his head had grown a little longer. Still, he wasn't about to burst his brother's bubble. It's great to be back, Mrs. Hughes, Ed grinned. I really hope that us coming on such short notice isn't a bother for you, Al added. Not at all, Gracia insisted. When May said that you boys were coming over with a friend, I was more than happy to have you over, just like old times. Gracia then looked to Minami. Minami, you must be tired after a long day. We have a guest room you can stay in, and you're more than welcome to join us for dinner tonight. Thank you so much, Minami thanked her. She had to admit, the thought of both food and sleep made her feel a whole lot better. So, I'm sure they are while they're still alive. After a shower followed by a delicious dinner, Minami retired to the guest room that Gracia offered her. It was only now that she was clean and full that she felt more tired than ever. She tossed her old clothes on the floor next to the bed, but jumped at the clunk that the heap made as it hit the floor. Oh, Minami realized that the thud was because of her phone that was in her pocket. She reached down to pick up her jeans and dig out everything she had in her pockets. She set everything down on the bed and looked over it all. Her wallet, phone charger, earbuds, and cell phone. These were the only things from her world that came with her. Minami reached to pick up her cell phone and turn it on to see her lock screen. She felt her heart throb at the sight of a picture of her and Kai, hugging each other and holding up peace signs at the camera. They were so happy in this picture. Minami wondered to herself, wherever Kai was he just as scared and tired as she was? Was he safe, somewhere where he could eat and shower, with people who tried to make everything as comfortable as possible, like she was? By the way, yes, this is art drawn by me. I mean, heavily referenced by another anime picture, but, you know, whatever. Yes, so here's me, but not me, different me. And here's Kai, her best friend. She knew that she was always the one to put on a brave front, but she always knew, deep down, that she was just as scared too, most of the time. If he could see her now and knew what a wreck she's been. Minami shook her head to dismiss her thoughts. I need to turn down this music. There we go. Minami shook her head to dismiss her thoughts as she unlocked her phone, being welcomed by a no-service message at the top bar of her screen. Not surprising, Minami let out a weak, bitter chuckle. Still, she navigated her way to her contacts and found Kai's name. What harm would it do to try, she thought. Minami pressed Kai's name and then held the phone up to her ear. She closed her eyes, only being welcomed by silence. No ring, no busy tone, not even a recording telling her that the line is out of service. Of course it wouldn't. Minami started to move her phone away from her ear, but stopped when she thought she had heard something. A chirp? A half ring? The sound was the sound was enough to give Minami hope once more, and she not only pushed her phone tightly against her ear, but she used her other hand to hold it there even closer. She waited in anticipation, feeling her heart start to pound in her chest. After a few more moments of silence, click! Hey! You've reached Kai Kuroshima! Kai? But Minami gasped. I'm afraid I'm not here at this moment, but leave a message after the beep! Kai's recorded voice took a deep breath. Beep! Beep! What? Despite hearing the tone, Minami was rendered silent. She stood there, utterly shocked that she had made it to Kai's voicemail. She then realized that she was limited on time. Voicemail recordings weren't long, and she didn't know if she would be able to get this far again. She quickly composed herself before starting to speak. I have no idea how I'm leaving this voicemail right now. There's no service— Wait, that doesn't matter. Minami got flustered and shook her head. Kai, please be alright. I found Russell, and he told me that you managed to escape before— Minami realized that she was rambling again. She stopped herself and took a breath. I don't know where you are, but I just hope you're safe. I promise, I'll do everything I can to find— You have exceeded the maximum time for recording. Thank you for calling. Goodbye. Click. Minami lowered the phone from her ear to look at her phone and see that the call had disconnected. She watched as the phone returned to her lock screen of the photo of her and her best friend. Her eyes quickly welled up with tears and pulled out. A teardrop fell from each eye, landing on both her and Kai's faces in the picture. Minami took a shaky breath and stuffed her phone into her pajama pants pocket. She turned to the bed and took all of her belongings to shove in her other pocket before she plopped down to sit on the bed. She lifted her hands so that she could hold her face in her hands, not even noticing that the door behind her had opened. Hey, Minami? Can I come in? Minami flinched when she heard Maze Hughes' voice. She quickly wiped her eyes with her sleeves before he could see her face as he stepped in. Gracie figured you could use a cup of tea. It could help you sleep better, you know, Maze said as he approached her. Approached her bed and set the mug of tea on her nightstand. Minami accidentally let out a soft sniffle before speaking. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Despite that she sniffled, she turned to look back at him and put on a pretty believable smile. The only thing that gave her away was, even though she wiped away her tears, her eyes still looked red and puffy. Maze offered a small smile. You look like you got a lot on your mind. Want to talk about it? Minami's smile faded, and she looked down at her lap. I wouldn't know where to begin. Go ahead and try, Maze chuckled as he went to sit down next to her on the bed. I'm no seasoned traveler, but I've definitely seen and been through quite a few things in my time. I work for the military. I already know about what happened to your world, as well as the ultimatum that the Führer gave you. Minami tensed at the word ultimatum. Maze decided to continue speaking. The boys may have also spilled the beans about the situation with your friend, but hey, they're just concerned about you. Minami didn't seem to mind. She was quiet for a long moment before letting out a sigh. Can I ask something? She kept her eyes on her lap. Shoot. I keep hearing that you guys are looking for Keyblades and their wielders, Minami started. That's right, Maze nodded. So, like, in the plural sense? How many have you found, other than me? Well, as you know, it's currently just you, Maze answered. There was a point where there were more, but those days have long come and gone. Honestly, I've been investigating it for a while myself, but so far, not much to say. Minami sighed again, with a hint of a whine in her voice, as she went to bury her face in her hands once again. I was supposed to start high school tomorrow. Oh, excuse me. Jeez, Louise. Not ready for that OST yet. I was supposed to start high school tomorrow, and now I'm here, apparently the only ray of hope when it comes to fighting this darkness and saving the whole galaxy, when I had no idea about any of it until now. She paused for a moment. I'm trying to be brave, but... She took a shaky breath as she lifted her head from her hands and looked up to Maze with trembling, scared eyes. This is way over my head, Mr. Hughes, she confessed. On top of that, if I say no to this ultimatum, I'm not only stranded here, but I'm also considered an enemy. If I say yes, and if I do somehow manage to do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, I'm gonna be bound to a military from a world entirely different than my own, and I doubt they're gonna let their only Keyblade wielder go home so easily. In that moment, Minami realized, no matter how she put it, she was trapped. Her face twisted into a pained scowl, and she turned her head to hide it. She was frustrated at how much she had cried in front of people today, especially because she hadn't even let Kai see her cry since the first day they met. It's a huge burden, no doubt about it, May said quietly. Everyone I know joined the military out of choice, even those 2 boys. But you didn't ask for this. You didn't want this. And now everything is going to be different. Some might say that's just life or part of growing up, but I think this is different. This is bigger than most people could handle, let alone imagine. Minami glanced out of the corner of her eye to see Maze had taken off his glasses and was wiping them with a cloth as he continued speaking. Excuse me. Even if you weren't going to be an enemy of the state, you don't seem to be the kind of person who would just sit back and do nothing. At least to me, he said. Either way, it would still be up to you. I might be part of the military, but I'm not going to pressure you to join. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can tell you what you can do. Minami turned her head to look at Maze, just as he finished wiping down his glasses and put them back on his face before looking back at her. What you can do is save and restore your world, and salvage, if not regain, what was lost. What you can do is find and save your friend. And furthermore, what you can do is trust us. Minami's eyes widened a little, allowing him to continue. I can't say what will happen once you've finished your duties, but I can promise you that, once you've sealed away the Heartless once and for all, that we'll leave you to your world and keep out of your affairs. Keep you out of our affairs. With that, Minami's offered her a reassuring smile. I have a friend higher up who will make sure of that. The boys, the colonel, and everyone else. All of them are going to be working not just for us, but also for you. I know we might seem like strangers right now, but just know that you're not alone. Minami stared back at him, her eyes wide. That was not only incredibly touching, but it made sense. For the first time since she came to this world, what somebody said to her didn't confuse her, terrify her, or both. Right now, Maze had laid out her options in such a simple yet straightforward way, but what he said also didn't scare her. In fact, it gave her hope. Minami couldn't explain it, but she felt so much better. Despite this, the already existent tears in her eyes spilled out when she finally blinked, and she quickly went to wipe her eyes with her sleeve. Thank you, Mr. Hughes. After she finished rubbing away her tears, she lowered her arm to reveal a soft smile on her face. Maze couldn't help but smile a little brighter in response. No problem, Minami. You just rest up for now. As he went to stand up, the bedroom door opened to reveal Alphonse Elric. Hi, Minami, the suit of armor greeted her, seeming to be uncomfortable. This is awkward, but, I have to spend the night with you, he squeaked, nervously reaching to touch the back of his metal, as if he were scratching it. The back of his metal helmet, as if he were scratching it. Huh? Minami blinked. I kind of have to, since, brother and I are supposed to watch you. Watch me? Minami asked, now feeling uncomfortable herself. We have the order that we gotta be within 6 feet of you at all times, a voice grumbled from behind the suit of armor. The door opened further, revealing Edward stepping in with a small mattress under one arm and a bundle consisting of pillows and a blanket in the other. I see. Minami resisted the urge to frown. And just like that, the moment of feeling better was over. What is this, some kind of slumber party? Maze asked, trying to lighten the mood. Perhaps my little Alicia can join. It could be her very first slumber party. No, that's fine, Minami insisted. All of this is... She had to take a deep breath before forcing a smile as she finished her sentence. Perfectly fine. It was obvious to her that the Elric brothers weren't doing this by their own accord. They were forced to do this as much as she was. She knew that the best thing she could do for everyone at this moment was to not be difficult. Maze read through her expression like an open book. Come on, the guest room across the hall was too far away to watch her? He looked back to Ed, letting out a chuckle. I don't know if I trust 2 boys in the same room as a girl. After all, you're all getting to be that age. Manami, Manami's face drained of color. Absolutely not, Ed glared at Maze after plopping the mattress down on the floor. She's got nothing to worry about, trust me. We're in here because it's our job. The suit of armor let out a weak, nervous chuckle. Sorry, Manami. Just pretend we're not here. Yeah, Ed said in agreement as he put down his blanket and pillow. We'll stay on the other side of the room and give you your space. Maze could only sigh softly through his nose. Orders were orders. Alright, he walked to the door. But I'm keeping the door open! Thank God, Manami thought to herself as Maze stepped out of the room, and she went to crawl under the covers of her bed. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a quick sip of water. That cup super doesn't match up with my face. Hold on. No. Hey, water cup, you wanna do? There we go. Good ol' H2O. Gotta hydrate the voice when you're reading so intensely. Excuse me. Okay. She remembered that Maze had left tea on the bedside table, and she reached a whole... No, stop it. It's not time. Stop it. She remembered that Maze had left tea on the bedside table, and she reached to hold the mug in both hands. I'm going to change. I'll be back. Okay, brother. Manami watched the Albert brothers have a short exchange before Ed walked out of the room. After he disappeared into the hallway, Al glanced back at Manami, who quickly averted her eyes and went to sip her tea. She hummed softly in response to how the warm drink relieved her throat. At least this world has tea. This thought had Manami begin to wonder what else this world had that was the same as her home. Her eyes scanned the room and recognized all basic furniture, some framed pictures on the wall, a clock, but one that was analog. The biggest difference she noticed was that there was no TV, but a radio on a corner table across the room. This world was similar to her own, that much was certain, but it definitely wasn't the same. By the time Ed had returned in pajamas, his hair now free of a braid, Manami had finished her tea. She set the empty mug on the bedside table and went to roll over on her side, her back facing the Elric brothers. From behind her, she heard Al's metal steps approach the bedside table. She wondered if Al was going to say something, but then the light clicked off before his metal steps returned to the opposite side of the room. After Al had sat down next to his brother's mattress, the room fell silent. Manami, after a few moments, started to feel uncomfortable because of it. She decided to pull her phone and earbuds out of her pocket. Whenever she was feeling lousy, music always helped. She plugged in an earbud into one of her ears and paused before she could plug the other one into her other ear. She suddenly felt obligated to say something to Ed now. Good night. Night, she heard Ed grumble. Good night, Manami. Al, on the other hand, sounded a little happy. Manami just left it at that. She plugged in her other earbud, navigated through her phone's music playlist under the covers, and closed her eyes once she settled on a song. And, only moments later, she was already asleep. Vert! Manami shot straight up, her heart racing. It felt as she had just woken up from one of those falling dreams, yet she had no recollection of whether or not she even had a dream. Her head whipped to the source of the noise that jolted her awake, and saw her cell phone vibrating harshly on the wooden surface that was her nightstand. Wait, her nightstand? In that moment, Manami realized that she knew exactly where she was. I'm in my room, she whispered, saying it aloud, like saying it aloud had confirmed it to be true. She was home! Manami snatched her phone, and now we have loud music. There we go. Turn it down a little bit. Happy music time. Manami snatched her phone from her nightstand to see that her alarm was going off. It was 10 a.m., the time that she was supposed to wake up on the morning of the carnival. Manami then couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. Today was the carnival, which meant it was all a dream! Manami laughed to herself as she jumped out of bed. As she got ready for the day, she had deduced that she had one of those dreams that was warning her not to make silly mistakes, like sleeping through her alarm or forgetting to brush her hair. And if I didn't, the whole world would have been destroyed. She couldn't remember when she last had a dream that was so ridiculous. That's it. No more snacks less than 2 hours before bed. She pointed her hairbrush to her reflection in the mirror, trying to keep a stern look, but she was quick to burst out laughing once more. But as she walked out, thinking of how she couldn't wait to tell Kai the story of her dream, she had failed to notice that she was wearing a blue, star-shaped necklace around her neck. Minami walked down the street at a comfortable pace, not worried by being pressed for time. She was now able to wait at crosswalks so that she could cross safely without worry of getting hit by any cars. When she arrived at the entrance for the carnival, she found no sign of Kai. Huh. Weird. Minami went to pull out her phone and check the time. It was about time for them to meet, but Kai was usually early for meetups. She figured it wouldn't hurt to call him, but just as she put her phone to her ear, Gah! Kai suddenly appeared in front of her, sweaty and out of breath. His hair was even a little messier than usual. Sorry, Kai wheezed. I slept past my alarm somehow and... Minami suddenly lunged forward, pulling him into a tight hug. Wow, Kai blinked in surprise from the sudden hug, but reached to hug her back. Happy to see you too, Minami. Sorry, Minami apologized, also chuckling weakly as she released her best friend. I just had a really weird dream last night. Yes, Sid, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome. I just had a really weird dream last night. I'll tell you more later. Let's go inside first. Again, Minami had failed to notice that she and Kai were already sporting their star and moon necklaces around their necks. Shortly after walking inside, Minami noticed a tent off to the side, and she frowned at the sight of it. Oh, sorry, no hablo español. Sorry. Want to check it out? Kai asked, having followed her glance to the tent. Nope, Minami said bluntly. Let's get food. I'm starving. With that, she pulled Kai to walk in the opposite direction of the tent. She didn't care what was in this tent, and if it was anything like her dream, she had no desire to find out. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about this whack dream I had. After they went to a food stand to get kebabs, without paying any money for some reason, Minami and Kai found their way to the usual spot on the pier to sit and eat. As they munched on their food and overlooked the sunset, Minami told Kai the whole story of her dream. So, I was basically kidnapped by this midget and his robot, while you got swallowed by this huge tornado of shadow monsters. And I was taken to this different planet that was like ours, but like also the 1920s? Minami looked over to see Kai staring blankly at her, making her scoff. I told you it was whack, she grinned at him. Thank you for the head pats. No kidding, Kai chuckled nervously, but weird or not, it was just a dream. I'm still here, see? He waved his kebab at her and chuckled. And I can say without a doubt that even if something crazy like that happened, nothing would ever keep us apart, right? Minami's smile grew bigger, and she nodded to her best friend. Right. She went to take another bite, but something hard had bumped against her mouth instead of food. Ow! What? Minami looked down, and her eyes went wide at the sight of not a kebab in her hand, but the keyblade. What? Minami raised her head to look up, and saw that the skies were dark and gray, the clouds swirling ominously. She then looked to her side to see that Kai was no longer sitting next to her. Kai? She called out, quickly standing up and looking around. When she finally located Kai, standing at the threshold of the pier. His head was lowered, and his bangs were shielding his eyes. Behind him, the Shadow Heartless were running amok, destroying the carnival and attacking people, just like before. Minami broke out into a run towards Kai, but it felt as if she was never getting any closer to him. No matter how hard she ran, he remained far away from her. Kai! Minami cried, outstretching her hand to reach out for him. She swore she heard him begin to chuckle, and saw that he raised his head to reveal his face, his expression starting to shift into something dark, as if he were laughing while crying. But then, his eyes met hers, and his expression changed into a dark and angry glare. You liar. Huh? Minami came to a halt, frozen in shock. Kai's shadow suddenly extended and towered above him, then split into 7. Each shadow started to make a distinct shape and size, but Minami couldn't properly make any of them out. She could only watch in horror as Kai's body was then enveloped by darkness. From within, Minami could see Kai give her a sinister grin, and as his brown eyes suddenly turned into a bright crimson red. Suddenly, the darkness surrounding him exploded with a black, fiery aura. Minami shielded her face by holding the keyblade in front of her, but the aura was so strong that it pushed her back. Kai! She cried out his name again, but lost her balance and fell backwards. Instantly, she realized that she wasn't going to land on the pier, but that she somehow was falling backwards over the edge. As she fell, she saw Kai step up to the edge of the pier, not to reach for her and help her, but to merely look down on her and watch her fall with those glowing crimson eyes. Splash! As Minami fell in and submerged under the chillingly cold water, she realized its familiarity immediately. This sensation, It was the same as the last dream she had, but this time, instead of being pushed into the water from above, she felt like something was pulling her down from below her. Minami let out a scream that was only muffled in the water, her chest getting tight after releasing the wasted air. She looked up to the surface, her vision of Kai getting dark and murky as she was pulled deeper and deeper under the water. Minami tried to scream as hard as she could once more, but only released bubbles. And then, she blacked out. Gah! Minami yelped, jumping to sit upright. She frantically looked around the dark room, not immediately recognizing where she was. The disorientation was overwhelming. Minami went to hold her head with shaking hands, breathing raggedly. Minami? Al was quick to notice that something was wrong. He didn't bother waking up his brother as he swiftly stood up and rushed to Minami's bedside. Did something happen? Are you all right? She wasn't responding. Al felt himself getting more worried by the second. He couldn't really see her face, but he could hear her panting short and panicked breaths. Was she trembling? He noticed something hanging out of her ear. It looked like a cord. He then realized that there was a chance that she couldn't hear him. What was he supposed to do? He was watching her have a panic attack, but could he help her? What if she looked up and saw something towering over her in the dark? And not even a second after Al had that thought, Minami did just that. She lifted her head and instantly saw the shadow hovering over her, with glowing red eyes. The same red eyes that Minami saw Kai with in her dream. And her eyes widened in horror. She instinctively flinched backwards, so harshly that one of her earbuds fell out of her ear. It's all right, Minami, Al whispered, holding his hands up passively. It's me, Alphonse. You're safe. No. Minami shook her head quickly, making the other earbud fall out of her other ear. No, I'm not safe, she whimpered, reaching to pull her knees close to her chest. He's not safe. Who? Oh, you mean Kai? He's in trouble, Minami stammered. Why? Why did he call me a liar? Why did he? Where? Minami couldn't find the words to form a proper sentence, and gave up with another whimper. She moved her hands tightly to grasp her necklace and hold it with both hands, clutching it to her chest for dear life. Calm down, Al pleaded. You had a bad dream. It's okay now. The suit of armor slowly knelt down by the bed so that he could be more eye level with her. Behind them, Ed let out a loud snore, indicating that he hadn't so much as stirred from his sleep this whole time. Al reached down to turn on the light. He figured that if Ed hadn't woken up by now, he wouldn't be waking up at all. Ed merely groaned and rolled over, facing away from the light before returning to his snoring. With a sigh, Al turned to look back at Minami, seeing that she had buried her face in her knees. He noticed her trembling shoulders slowly rising and lowering. It took him a moment, but he realized that she was forcing herself to take deep breaths. Eventually, her shoulders stopped shaking, at least as harshly as before. She continued to take slow, even breaths. The worst of it seemed to be over. I'm gonna take a quick sip, really quick. Quick sip! My cup was probably there the whole time. That's fine. Excuse me, I had to mute my microphone to gargle water. Anyway, get rid of that water cup. We're reading now. Al hesitated to ask, Are you okay? Minami slowly nodded into her knees, before slowly lifting her head so that she could meet his eyes. I'm sorry that you had to see that. She looked more tired than she did before going to bed. Oh, don't worry, Al assured her, his voice comforting. Brother used to have the same kinds of dreams when we were younger. Sometimes he still does. He glanced back to his brother, who seemed to be still sleeping peacefully. I'm used to things like this. Still, I woke you up, Minami said, making Al look back at her and blink in surprise. Did she not know? Actually you didn't, Al said quietly. You were already up? Minami asked, tilting her head. Well, Al started, I don't sleep. I don't sleep because, well, I literally can't. Not with this body. Minami's brows furrowed a little. I'm sorry, but I don't think I understand. Al gave a nod, already knowing that she hadn't caught on. She saw the inside of his armor, but she never asked about it. He could only assume that she figured that it was none of her business, something that Ed wished more people did. He glanced over his shoulder to his brother once more, knowing that Ed wouldn't have approved of him telling Minami about their situation. Not only was it personal, but it was also something that could get them in a lot of trouble. Still, Al knew that he and Ed were about to embark on a journey with this girl, but maybe telling her a little about himself would help them get to know each other better, to where she didn't see them as strangers anymore, and maybe she could be a little more comfortable around them. It's complicated, but I'll explain as best as I can, Al finally said, looking back at her. This body, as you know, it's just hollow armor. The reason I'm able to walk around and talk is because my heart is bound to it. He paused for a moment. I lost my real body, and Brother lost an arm and a leg. What you see on him now are automail, metal prosthetic limbs. He still blames himself for what happened to the both of us. Minami could only stare in silent disbelief after hearing Al's explanation. Finally, she managed to muster some words to whisper. I'm so sorry. She realized right after saying that she should say something more. She looked down and thought for a moment. Was that something that happened while you were in the military? No, Al shook his head. It was long before that. The whole reason we even joined the military is because it was our best option if we wanted to get our bodies back to normal. We did this to ourselves. Minami bit her lower lip, feeling bad for Al. She felt bad for both of them. She paused. Being my bodyguard isn't helping you get your bodies back, is it? That doesn't matter, Minami, Al replied, shaking his head. Right now, all these worlds are in danger, and getting my body back won't mean anything if I have no world left to return to. It's been years, but we can wait a little longer. Despite what he said, Al didn't sound sad about it. He sounded like he had already thought this through and had set his priorities. Right now, you need us more, he told her. But Minami found herself to be unhappy with that response. That's not fair. Huh? Al blinked in surprise. Why does everything have to be one or the other? She asked, frowning up at him. Why does it have to be that you two have to drop everything to follow me around? Why does it have to be that I have to say yes or no to this ultimatum? Al found himself unable to answer, and he averted his eyes. You say it doesn't matter, but it matters to me that you already have something you need to do, but The realization had clicked in her mind, making her eyes widen as she finished her sentence. Just as stuck as I am. Al looked back to Minami, but still couldn't think of any way to respond. After all, she hit the nail on the head. Sorry, Minami finally said, after a long pause, and lifted a hand to hold her head. I don't get it. If we really have to stick together, shouldn't we be helping each other? But Minami, we are helping each other. Minami looked up to the suit of armor with surprise. My brother and I are helping you to find your friend and save your world, and you're helping us protect ours, Al told her. Besides, there's always a chance that we could find the answer we're looking for while we're with you. The Keyblade holds many secrets, and can unlock many more. Minami smiled a little back at him. I can only hope that would be the case. I feel pretty lousy at the thought of keeping you away from your goal longer than you need to be. I like to think that traveling to these different worlds with you will be our best bet to finding what we're looking for, Al replied, a smile in his tone. Neither of them had noticed that Ed had stopped snoring a while ago. He had actually woken up, but didn't reveal such. He just laid on his side, his back facing them as he silently listened to their conversation, frowning down at the floor. But please, don't worry about us, Minami, Al assured the Keyblade wielder. We're fine, I promise. If anything, we're more worried about you. Hey, Kuma, Ed creepin'! Yeah, I've been a wreck this whole time, haven't I? Minami couldn't muster a smile, but she went to rub the back of her head. Back home, I was always considered to be the brave one, between Kai and I. He wouldn't believe it if he saw me now, crying and having panic attacks. Minami let out a bitter chuckle. If he did see you like that, I'm sure he'd have no problem lifting you up and being your strength, Al assured her. After all, that's what happens sometimes with me and brother, when one of us comes close to giving up. Minami gave a nod, but found herself thinking of the dream she just had. She couldn't shake this bad feeling she had. She had reached to touch her necklace once again. But now, I have no idea where he is, she said quietly. That dream? I can't shake the feeling that he's in trouble. Wherever he is, you'll find him. And brother and I will help you. That's a promise, Al said. Minami couldn't help but smile back at him. Well, if that's the case, I'll help you get your bodies back to normal, and that'll be my promise. That's fair, right? Al blinked, but couldn't help but let out a chuckle. He didn't even tell her about equivalent exchange, but she seemed to have already got a knack for it. Mom, Nami, reading! Yes, get comfy, get your blinkies and snackies! I'm reading. Yes, okay. He didn't even tell her about equivalent exchange, but she seemed to already have a knack for it. He hummed, giving her a nod. I think that's plenty fair. But for now, you should try to go back to sleep. Minami nodded back to him, going to lay back down under the covers as Al reached to turn off the light. Like before, she felt obligated to say something before Al went back to the other side of the room. Oh? Al stopped and turned to look back at her. Did you need something? No, Minami shook her head, before offering a small smile. I wanted to say thank you. Al gave a nod to her, wishing that he could give her a smile in return. You're welcome, he said, a smile in his voice instead. Good night, Minami. Oh, this chapter, and here we go. Let's go. Okay, you guys ready for a Kai perspective? Last time I read this, I had to cut this scene out because I was Kingdom Hearts Minami when I was reading this last. But now we get to have a meanwhile with Kai. You guys ready? You guys ready? I'm so excited. You ready? I am. Let's go. Okay. Deep down in a secret underground labyrinth, Kai was battling a strange, green-haired, androgynous being, making use of a sword he had been given. The blade almost looked like a bat wing, consisting of a dark blue and red color with what appeared to be an eyeball embedded near the hilt. Kai's opponent would just dodge every single attack of his, flipping and rolling out of the way with every attack. Frustrated, Kai struck the ground so hard that he created a small fissure that made his opponent lose balance and stumble backwards. He took advantage of the opening and went in for the attack, but then, pow! Kai was slammed in the ribs by the hilt of his opponent's blade, immediately knocking the wind out of him. He fell to his knees, holding his stomach as he gasped for air and sweated heavily. He thought he might throw up. You've gotta be kidding! Come on, that was just a love tap. You can't expect me to believe that you go down like that. The green-haired being approached Kai and squatted down to be at eye level with him. I guess it's no wonder she left you behind. All you were gonna do was hold her back. Kai let out a weak cough, doing his best to push himself to stand up while still holding his stomach with one hand. No, he grunted. Minami would never. She'd never. He felt himself get choked up, and he gritted his teeth as his eyes started to overflow with tears. He did his best to keep from crying, his body trembling, but the tears still spilled from his eyes. Really? You're crying? The green-haired being snickered. Well, if that's the case, I'll take my leave then. No reason to stick around with a broken man. Wait! Kai cried out, now trying to get back up. Come back! I'm not finished with... He couldn't stand back up, and Kai once again fell to his knees, beginning to sob. He was so confused, alone, and angry at this whole situation. Meanwhile, a woman in a black dress and a round, bald, fat man merely watched from the shadows. The woman smiled at the fact that Kai's heart was breaking, while the fat one was hoping that he would get permission to eat him. Get up! Kai slowly opened his eyes and looked up, seeing an older man in a uniform, wearing an eye patch. He didn't know at the time, but this was King Bradley, the Führer himself. Miss Lotto, hi, welcome! Well, get up! The Führer commanded. I'm not going to offer you my hand. Where's your pride, boy? Kai was scared, but he tried to pull back his crying and managed to stand up on his own 2 feet. Not only was he trembling from fear, but also from immense pain. Now that's more like it. Bradley frowned down at him. Look at you. If a boy like you was raised where I was, you'd be the first one dead and discarded. He then went to draw one of his swords. The only way to survive is to be the best. And so far, you're the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. It sickens me. But lucky for you, you do have some potential. Bradley then glanced over to the fissure that Kai's strike had left earlier. Surely, if his previous opponent had been hit by such a blow, it would have actually dealt some hefty damage. Kai gritted his teeth and held his sword tightly in both hands. He looked tired, but Bradley could see, at the very least, that a fire had started to burn in the boy's eyes. Now then, come at me! What? Kai squeaked. But I can't fight you like this. I can barely stand. If you can stand, then you can fight, Bradley yelled. Now, come at me! Kai trembled as flashbacks of when Minami would defend him from bullies ran through his head. Whenever he was knocked down, she would always chase them away and help him back up. But now, she wasn't here. Maybe she was finally sick of saving him. Kai squinted his eyes shut and charged at the Führer, yelling out in frustration. He knew that he was just going to get hurt again. He knew that he didn't stand a chance. But at this point, he knew that he needed to get strong. He had to see her again. He had to ask her why. Wow, so... Okay, I will answer any questions after this chapter, because I think this is the 3rd chapter for tonight, and then I generally answer... I actually have something that I just want to tell you guys automatically. But yeah, we'll get to that at the end. Excuse me. I'm gonna start the song over because I feel like it. Meanwhile, 3 more beings were watching Kai from the shadows. A massive, muscular man who was more than twice the size of anyone else present. 1 normal-sized man sporting a vest and sunglasses, and a small child. Hearing him cry and scream wakes me up. Can't sleep. Such a pain. It seemed that the giant man just wanted to sleep. I'm just impressed that he hasn't wet his pants yet, all things considered, the human-like man scoffed, seeming uninterested. His heart is so weak, the child spat, his violet eyes narrowing. How could he be the chosen one for a Keyblade? Expect the unexpected? The man next to him chuckled. Well, no matter. Either way, we will toughen him up, even if we have to break him apart before we rebuild him. Just a shame we have to hold back. Otherwise, he'd be dead by now. You guys have been holding back on him? I can't whistle right now. My lip... Hold on, wait, let me try that again. Nope. There we go! Lucky him, huh? But then again, maybe he'd like to be put out of his misery. While the 3 shadows talked amongst themselves, Kai clashed his blade with the Führer's. He was gritting his teeth, swinging his blade as hard as he could, mostly out of frustration. The Führer blocked everything with ease, but realized that his blades were starting to chip and crack. It was obvious. The boy's blows were indeed getting stronger and faster. At this rate, he was going to shatter the blade. Bradley decided to end the battle in one fell swoop, smashing the handle of his blade into Kai's stomach, and then unleashing a blast of wind with the thrust of his sword. He deliberately missed him with the blade, but the blast still knocked him away and knocking him out cold. Is he dead, Lust? The fat man asked. Can I eat him? No, Gluttony, the woman replied in a low and sultry voice. But do be a dear and fetch him. I think he's earned just a little rest for now. After all, Father won't be happy if we kill him. How's Minami doing? Minami awoke the next morning, finding herself not in her room, but the guest bedroom at the Hughes residence. The truth was finally sinking in. What she hoped was just a dream was, in fact, very real. Oh, I'm sorry, that probably wasn't visible to you guys. I'm actually going to do something really quick, right here, right now. Because I like having space. I don't know about y'all. There we go. Just give me all this. Okay, cool. Alright. I don't know why I had this cropped away in the first place. There we go. Ah, much better. Thanks. Okay. Minami groaned softly, going to sit up in her bed and rub the sleep out of her eyes. Good morning, Minami. She looked up to see Al sitting in his spot across the room. She noticed that Ed wasn't in the bed beside him. Maybe he went to the bathroom? Minami opened her mouth to say hello, but the door opened, and Maze walked in before she could. Morning, Minami! Sleep well? He greeted her, stepping inside the room. He wore the same blue uniform that Roy Mustang and Riza Hawkeye wore, while holding a mug of coffee in his hand. Owl? Owl. Yeah. Hoot hoot. It's okay. Sorry, I didn't pull up my cup, but I had to take a quick sippy. Okay. Holding a mug of coffee in his hand. Just checking up on you before I head on over to Central Command. Think you kids might need a lift, or do you need more time to think things over? It took Minami a second to understand what he meant. Oh. Her expression hardened a little. No, I made my decision. Great, Maze beamed. What'd you decide? Isn't that technically confidential? Minami chuckled nervously. I think your boss should be the first to know. Fear is what we call him, Maze corrected her, but nicely. But yeah, you're probably right. That be the case? I'll bring you kids over to headquarters so you don't have to walk. I thought we entered 100-acre woods. Oh my gosh. Before Manami could thank him, Gracia stepped in the room with Alicia. Good morning, Manami. I washed her clothes for you. Alicia, dear, can you give them to her?
Yes, Mommy.
The young girl took the neatly folded clothes from her mother and crossed the room to hand them to Manami.
Here you go, Nami, she beamed.
Manami couldn't help but smile as she reached down to take her clothes from her. Thank you very much, Alicia. Al internally smiled at the sight of them. It was nice to see Manami smile. From behind him, he heard a sniffle. He turned to look and saw Maze tearing up at the sight of the girls. They're so cute! They could be sisters! I'm going to get ready then. Manami hadn't noticed Maze and went to get up. She took the clean clothes with her out of the room and down the hall to the bathroom where she had showered the night prior. As she neared the door, it opened. She stopped at the sight of Ed stepping out of the bathroom. He was dressed in the same outfit and red coat that he wore yesterday, reaching behind his head to tie his hair back while he held a hair tie in his teeth. He stopped at the sight of Manami standing in front of him. Mornin', he greeted her, through the teeth that were still holding his hair tie. Manami gave him a small nod. Morning. The two stood there in awkward silence until Manami finally stepped to the side to allow Ed to pass her. She watched silently as he walked past her and returned to the guest bedroom that they spent the night in. It was easier to talk to Al for sure, but Ed was just as stuck with her. The problem was that Manami wasn't quite sure how to really get along with Ed yet. She dismissed the thought with a shrug and went into the bathroom so that she could get ready. When she finished, she stared at her reflection in the mirror for a long moment. She knew what her decision was. It wasn't like she had much of a choice, but at least she had time to think about it all. She was now nervous as to where things would go from here. Manami took a deep breath through her nose and then let it out through her mouth. She then frowned at her reflection and then pointed to it. You got this. Back home, whenever Manami was nervous or scared about something, she would have a pep talk with her reflection. Sometimes it helped her feel better. It didn't really now. Knock, knock. Manami jumped, startled back to reality. Hey, Manami, May's voice spoke, muffled from behind the bathroom door. Just letting you know that we have breakfast on the table. You don't want to face the day on an empty stomach, do you? Don't be afraid to join us when you're done in there. Okay, thank you, Manami replied. Breakfast did sound nice. Having breakfast together, Manami sharing the table with the Hughes family and the Elrics, was probably the best moment so far in Amestris. Everyone seemed to really appreciate her company, and for a moment, Manami forgot about the things that scared her. It almost felt like she was part of a family gathering, even though she wasn't related to any of them. Even after the meal, Manami was probably in her best spirits so far. As Maze went to bring Manami, Ed, and Al to his car, Manami blurted out something. Shotgun! She beamed. Huh? Ed and Al gasped. What? Where? Maze looked around. I thought I kept that in the house, in case anyone tries to lay a finger on my daughter! Manami and the Elric brothers stared at him in an awkward silence. What? Maze asked. I just wanted to sit in the front seat, Manami said quietly, only having realized now that Amestrians clearly didn't use the term shotgun to call dibs. Oh, then why didn't you say so? Maze laughed. It's just a thing we say on my world, Manami explained, feeling sheepish. What does that have to do with shotguns? Ed asked. Maybe they threaten each other with shotguns to see who'll get the front seat? Al mused. No, Manami insisted, getting more embarrassed by the second. It's just an expression. After Maze drove Manami and the Elric brothers to Central Command, he then left them under the care and supervision of Roy Mustang, who then made the phone call to inform the Fuhrer that the Keyblade wielder had arrived. Manami sat on one of Roy's couches, staring down at her hands that were folded tightly in her lap. Despite that she knew what she was going to say, her heart was still beating harshly in her chest. Ed and Al sat on the other couch across from her, also awkwardly waiting. No one wanted to say anything. Ring, ring! Manami jumped at the sudden sound and looked up to see Roy answer his phone. Colonel Roy Mustang speaking. Yes. Yes. Right away. He hung up the phone, then looked to Manami and the Elric brothers. The Fuhrer's ready for you three in his office to discuss the ultimatum. He looked over to Riza, standing beside his desk. Lieutenant, could you escort them? Yes, sir. And with that, Manami followed behind Riza, the Elric brothers following behind Manami, who walked to the Fuhrer's office. His office was a little far away and on the topmost floor, but it made sense, considering how important he was. They approached a set of wide double doors, which Riza opened, and then gestured Manami and the Elric brothers inside. Minami swallowed nervously and stepped inside, followed by the Elric brothers, and then Riza following after them. Minami noticed immediately how different the Führer's office was from Mustang's. To start, it was a much bigger room than any other she had been in. It also contained nicer quality furniture, extravagant to where it might as well have been a throne room. So, Minami, I hear from Colonel Mustang that you've made a decision. Minami looked up to see the same man she met yesterday, Führer King Bradley. I'm quite impressed. You were able to come to one faster than expected, Bradley said, sitting at a desk across the room. Please, take a seat right in front of my desk. I'm curious about everything you have to say. Excuse me. What do you got? Pooh, why do you have a shotgun? Put the gun down, Pooh. Oh, snap. Pooh's got a gun. If you don't even have a small smackle of honey, your life is worthless. Look at y'all going nuts in chat.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. As Minami slowly began to approach his desk, Bradley looked up to Riza. Oh, you may leave them here and resume your other duties, Lieutenant, he told her. I'll take things from here. Yeah, you are writing your own crapfic in the chat, that's fine. Minami looked back to see Riza saluting her Führer before leaving the room and shutting the doors behind her with a loud click. She turned back to face Bradley and slowly went to sit in the chair in front of him. Ed stepped to Minami's left while Al stood at her right. Bradley put his elbows on his desk and folded his hands together as he stared at her with his one and only eye, as if he were already judging her. Minami felt herself already getting intimidated. It was as if the look he was giving her was telling her, "Mind your tongue, child." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Ed and Al both looked at her out of the corners of their eyes, watching her take a deep breath before trying to speak again. With all due respect, she started, there was only one real answer. Bradley merely raised his eyebrows, allowing her to continue. This is all new to me. Darkness, Heartless, Keyblades, Minami said. But, for whatever reason, I'm chosen as a wielder. And, as it stands, I'm the only one, right? That's correct, Bradley nodded. Minami nodded slowly. I just have one question before I give you my answer, sir. Yes? Minami took another deep breath. You said yesterday, if I were to say no to this ultimatum, that would make me your enemy. My question is, how would you intend to fight the darkness and save these worlds if you were enemies with the only Keyblade wielder you found? Ed and Al's eyes widened in shock. Why is she asking that? They both thought. Why did I just ask that? Minami was internally kicking herself, but somehow she was managing to keep her composure outwardly. Bradley didn't say anything for a long moment, only giving Minami a very intense stare that made her shrink more and more by the second. The dreadful silence made Ed break out into a cold sweat. It was even making Minami begin to sweat. She considered taking back her question before the Führer suddenly let out a hearty laugh, much to everyone's surprise. Ha ha ha! How very astute! He said, before regaining his composure. As I said, a Keyblade is a powerful weapon. With it, one can close the very holes through reality that the Heartless pour in from. But it's also possible they can make more and bring entire worlds to ruin, Bradley explained. At some point in your life, you could literally become powerful enough to plunge entire worlds into darkness, like with what happened to your world. I think you can see why we can't risk you going down the wrong path. With that, he unfolded his hands and rested them on the arms of his chair. The truth is that our ability to deal with these threats are limited, he continued. We've developed ways of sealing these holes where the Heartless emerge by using magic and alchemy. However, such seals are not only just temporary, but the resources and power needed are costly, and the manner to go about it is tedious at best. A Keyblade is more efficient for both sealing and locating keyholes. Minami said nothing, processing everything the Führer was telling her. So, to answer your question, he continued, we go about fighting the darkness the same way we have for years, but we'd also have to look for another Keyblade wielder who would join our ranks, act quickly, and not doom us all. Look at you going in chat. Guys. Okay. Sorry, I'm just like feeling very thirsty. Anyway, not eat or die. Minami nodded slowly. I see. She looked down to her lap, thinking for a moment before speaking again. Well, I'm not here to make enemies or doom anyone. Minami clenched her hands tightly in her lap. I know my world was lost, but others were too, weren't they? If I'm the only one you have who can turn things around, who can defeat the darkness and restore the worlds... She took another deep breath and then lifted her head so that she could look Bradley in the eye. Then, I have to accept your offer. Bradley's lips curled into a smile. But, Minami spoke up, making Bradley's smile immediately fade. Yes, he asked, in a tone that didn't show any sign of impatience. Along with that mission, I have 2 more that I want to undertake, sir. Oh? Bradley hummed. And what will those additional missions be? When I lost my world, I also lost my best friend, Kai. Minami frowned. I got word that he escaped when our world was lost, which means he's somewhere out there. My first mission is that I need to find him. Bradley gave her a nod. And the second? Minami glanced at Ed now before looking back to Bradley. These 2 had obligations of their own before being assigned to be my bodyguards. I'd like for my second mission to be to help them find whatever they're looking for. Ed now looked down at her, their eyes wide. Before they could object, Bradley spoke. As long as you swear to never use your power to attack the military you serve, the world we stand on, or any worlds for that matter, you're free to do whatever you please. When you're between assignments, he said. I've already allowed the Ulrich brothers to do their personal research on the side, and I shall grant you the same courtesy. Bradley then reached into his desk and pulled out a document. But, his expression darkened. The moment you need to be summoned, whether it's due to a crisis or something as simple as answering questions, it is mandatory that you return. Bradley set down the document on the desk and slid it across to Minami. It was a contract. Feel free to take your time reading before you sign, the Führer said. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Minami swallowed thickly at the sight of the contract, but picked it up to read over. Seeing everything in writing had made her more nervous than ever before. Still, she read the contract all the way through, and slowly picked up the pen that Bradley had also provided her. Ed and Al watched her closely out of the corners of their eyes, still standing at attention for the fear. Goodness gracious, my throat is, getting icky. Sorry, y'all, I'm not giving you gargling ASMR.
Anyway!
Okay. Ed and Al watched her closely out of the corners of their eyes, still standing at attention for her. Standing at attention for the Führer. They could see the hand that was holding the pen trembling a little. Minami knew that she had to sign the document. Was Pachapata the script? Nope, sure wasn't. Oh my god. Minami knew that she had to sign the document. Not only were multiple worlds depending on her, but she had to find Kai. There was no other way to do these things than by joining the Amestrian military. But still, she couldn't shake this bad feeling. Finally, Minami gripped her pen tightly and signed her name on the line at the bottom of the page. Once she finished signing, an empty feeling washed over her, causing her to let the pen fall out of her hand and onto the desk with a light tap. Ed frowned a little, while Al looked down at his feet. They both had felt guilty for her, but now, seeing that hopeless look in her eyes as she signed herself away, they recalled feeling similar when they joined the military. But the difference was that they joined the military on their own accord. Minami didn't have a choice. Congratulations, you are now officially among the ranks of the Amestrian military, Bradley announced, taking back the document. You will be serving and protecting not just our world, but numerous worlds across the galaxy. Welcome aboard, Minami. Your training starts this afternoon. Wait, already? Al asked, realizing afterwards that he was speaking out of place. Exactly as I said, Bradley confirmed. We already have Minami's training session scheduled. Would you boys please escort our new Keyblade wielder to the courtyard at noon? We'll begin things with some magic training, so that she can begin to unlock the Keyblade's power. Afterward, there will be some sword training to further her combat prowess. Sword training? Al squeaked. Magic training? Ed followed up, his voice also higher pitched. Yes, Bradley answered. She has been assigned 2 teachers to oversee each form of training. There was a long pause, before Ed and Al suddenly hunched over, as if they were sulking. Minami swore she could hear Al let out a whimper. Ahem! Bradley cleared his throat. the sound making Ed and Elle snap to stand back at attention and firmly salute. Right, Ed exclaimed. We'll be sure to take her to meet her parents. Let me do that one over. We'll be sure to take her to meet her teachers later today. Our scary, scary teachers, both Elrics were thinking. Minami watched as Ed struggled to keep a straight demeanor, but his eyebrow kept twitching. Still, she wasn't surprised at the news that she'd be getting started on training quickly. In fact, she was expecting it. You're dismissed, Bradley announced. And with that, Ed and Al walked ahead and each opened one of the double doors, waiting for Minami to exit before following her out. Once the door shut behind them, Minami let out a pent-up breath that sounded more like a wheeze. She whined. That was stressful. While Minami took a moment to compose herself, Ed looked up to Al, who returned his glance. Al leaned down to whisper to his brother, while Minami's back was turned to them. Maybe they'll go easy on her once they see she's the Keyblade wielder? Hopefully. Don't count on it, Ed whispered back, but leaned away from his brother the moment Minami turned to face them. Well, we have some time to spare. Anything you have in mind? Oh my goodness! Skyward Key, thank you for the sub! Oh my gosh! Thank you! Hi, Jisagi. How are you? My goodness. Nothing better than listening to fanfic while sewing. Especially a Kingdom Hearts fanfiction. Sky, you are the biggest Kingdom Hearts fan I know. But yes, guys, everyone here, I am not the biggest Kingdom Hearts fan you know. I am the biggest Full Metal fan you know. Skyward Key here, biggest Kingdom Hearts fan you'll ever meet. Like, faux real. Faux real! Sorry, I'm taking this opportunity for a sippy. You're sewing a pirate pirate sew a coat. Yes. Juicebox, you're here! My co-writer's here. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to show you the VOD where I was reading, oh my gosh, the OST you sent for the flashback with Kai is so good. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna continue. $5. Oh, have you been? Wasn't that part so good? I love the music you chose for that scene. The Steins Gate OST. Okay, anyway, I need to, okay. Where am I? Okay. Maybe they'll go easy on her once they see she's the Keyblade wielder? Hopefully? Don't count on it, Ed whispered back, but leaned away from his brother the moment Minami turned to face them. Well, we have some time to spare. Anything you have in mind that you'd like or need to do? Ed asked her. Nope, Minami shrugged, seemingly indifferent. Ed expected to see a more sad expression on her face, but she actually seemed to be taking everything in stride today. I know, Al chimed in. Why don't we introduce Minami to Winry and Granny Panako? Who redeemed that woe? Yeah. Professor, yes. Thank you. Persephone, thank you for the hydrate, and Sky, thank you for the posture check. I could use all of these things. Okay, let's do it to it, friendos. Ahem. I know, Al chimed in. Why don't we introduce Minami to Winry and Granny Panako? Oh yeah, Ed smiled at his brother. Good idea, Al. I might need a tune-up for my automail, and we gotta make sure our ship is in working condition. I'm sure Winry would want to meet Minami too. Both brothers... Oh, okay. Hi. Thank you for not starting at the beginning. Stop that. Anyway. Both brothers looked to Minami, who still wore a neutral expression, but she gave a nod to them. Ah, Miss Lotto, Yowie Boy, oh my gosh, everyone's here. The woe is probably quiet because I have the music adjusted for the music. That's okay. I'll give you a real loud whoa at the end. What is this? This is hello, I'm a juice box and eyes, what did you call it earlier, Soulless? A collab roleplay fanfiction. Long story short, Juicebox here and I have been working on this project since 2007. So it's Kingdom Hearts, but instead of Disney, we have anime involved. Yeah. So we roleplayed it first, and then I edited it into like a novel-style fanfiction. So, yeah, roleplay collab fic, I don't know. Look, it means a lot to me. And meanwhile, in chat, you guys are writing like a crack poo, Winnie the Pooh fiction. I don't even know. You guys are just going off. Spaghetti and Minami balls. What? Both brothers looked to Minami, who still wore a neutral expression, but she gave a nod to them. Sure, she said. Lead the way. Minami quietly followed Ed and Al through central headquarters to the lower levels of the building, walking into what looked like a garage. She stopped at the sight of a big spaceship taking a moment to get a good look at it. That's our gummy ship, Al stepped beside her. You probably didn't get to take a good look at it before. Manami let out a weak chuckle as Al rubbed the back of his head, both of them recalling their last time in the gummy ship not being a particularly positive experience. Well, I know that it moves fast, Manami smiled sheepishly, trying to make light of the awkwardness. Hey, Winry, Granny, we're back, Ed called to the ship, and it wasn't until someone rolled out from under the ship on a creeper that Manami realized Ed was talking to them. The stranger sat up and flipped up their welder's mask to reveal a girl with bright blue eyes and blonde hair. Manami then noticed someone walk out from behind the ship to join her, someone even shorter than Ed, an old woman. Edward! The mechanic got up from her creeper and approached the trio with a smile, until she got within range of Ed to hit him over the head with the wrench that she held in her hand. Whack! Manami's eyes widened in shock. Gah! Ed yelped in pain, stepping back and holding his head. What was that for? Where were you? The girl yelled at him. I heard that you and Al barely escaped from a world literally swallowed by darkness, and you don't even come to let us know you're all right? Really? Oh, come on, we got out of it okay. We're fine, Ed argued. And the gummy ship is in one piece too. It's not like we didn't check in on purpose. We've been occupied ever since we got back. Whatever. Just give me your arm, the girl muttered, yanking Ed by the prosthetic and shoving his sleeve up his arm so that she could inspect it closely. Manami watched as the girl pulled Ed aside, but then noticed the old lady approaching her. So you must be the Keyblade wielder they found, the woman said, holding a long pipe in her hand. I'm sorry about what happened to your world. At the very least, I trust the boys have been taking good care of you? Yeah, they have, Manami answered, putting on a small smile. Smile. I said smiled. Getting tired. She wondered to... Oh my god, why can't I speak? She wondered to herself how Ed and Al knew these two. The girl was also blonde, and they called this old lady Granny. Were they all related? My name is Manami, she introduced herself, bowing her head politely. Pleased to meet you, dear. I'm Pinako. Winry! Pinako barked to the blonde mechanic, who was still looking at Ed's arm. Come introduce yourself to the Keyblade wielder. You can fiddle and tinker with Ed's arm after. Huh? The one known as Winry looked up and noticed Manami standing with Pinako and Al. Oh! She quickly got up, leaving Ed to sit alone at her workstation as she approached Manami, embarrassed at the fact that she had neglected arguably the most important person in the room. Sorry. Edward has a habit of busting his automail, or the gummy ship, so I just needed to make sure that nothing was broken this time, she apologized. I only crashed the gummy ship once, I'll have you know, Ed barked from across the room. And how many times did you break your automail? Winry snapped back, to which Ed turned his head in silent defeat. Winry looked back to Manami and extended a hand to shake. It's an honor to meet you. I'm Winry Rockbell. Granny, Pinako, and I are Ed and Al's personal mechanics and engineers. Nice to meet you too, Manami smiled back at her, taking her hand and shaking it. It was a little comforting that there was at least a girl her age around. So, are you Ed and Al's sister? She asked. Me? Huh? No, Winry laughed. You're not far off, though, Pinako said. They've been friends since they were born, though I did practically raise those boys. Oh, I see, Manami nodded in understanding. Ed's eyes narrowed. He knew that Manami didn't know much about their past, and he saw this conversation possibly going in that direction. He decided to change the subject. Anyway, he pushed himself to roll across the room on his chair to be with the group. We've been staying at Mr. and Mrs. Hughes' place. Oh, really? Winry perked up. I should visit. I haven't seen Alicia in a while. Manami found herself to not be paying as much attention to the conversation, but instead staring at Ed's prosthetic arm. This whole time, he was wearing long sleeves and gloves. She didn't even know that his arm and leg were prosthetics until Al told her last night, but now she was actually seeing it for the first time. Winry had noticed Manami staring at it first, and grinned at her. You like it? I made it myself. Huh? Oh, Manami got a little flustered at the fact that she got caught staring, which was probably considered rude. Yeah, she smiled sheepishly. You really made all that? Uh-huh, Winry nodded. As well as his leg, as well as all the limbs he's destroyed thus far. The blonde mechanic shot Ed a glare, but he once again turned his head to avoid seeing it. Manami blinked. Destroyed how? Well, Al and I kind of run into some trouble here and there while we were on our journey. Before we met you, Ed explained, once again finding himself to be too close to the topic that he was trying to avoid. That or it just got damaged when we were on assignments for the military. I mean, these things happen, but that's why I have Winry. He let out a nervous laugh. How can you say that so casually? Winry asked him. Do you forget how much time, work, and effort I put into every single arm and leg I make for you? What? You think that gives you an excuse to just keep breaking them? She waved her wrench in his face as a warning, then looked back to Minami. You know how many times this bean came back to us and his automail was in pieces? Or worse, he had no automail at all? What? No! Ed shook his head. I'm not using this as an excuse to keep breaking them. I just know I can count on you, that's all. Wait, did you just call me a bean? Minami couldn't help but smile nervously as the two blondes argued. Al looked down to Minami, sparking his own topic of conversation. Don't worry, they usually argue like this, he told her. Anyway, automail's pretty neat, huh? Yeah, Minami said with a nod. We have the same thing on my world, too. I always thought it was neat to give someone something like that. Huh? Winry looked up from her and Ed's banter. You have automail? Well, it wasn't called automail specifically, but we have prosthetics. Yeah, like... Minami paused to reach in her pocket and pull out her cell phone. In times like this, Minami would access Moogle to look something up, but she was instead welcomed to the no service message at the top of her phone screen. That's right, there wouldn't be any service here in Amestris. Duh, Minami thought to herself. She looked up to see Winry staring curiously at the strange device in her hand. What is that? Yes, we don't directly call it Google, we call it Moogle in this universe. Fun little Easter egg. What is that? Everyone was carrying one of those things around in her world, Ed mumbled, crossing his arms. Well, it's not much here, but at home, this was a cell phone, Minami explained, holding it up to show Winry. Can I see? Winry's eyes sparkled, but Minami couldn't help but feel a little nervous. I mean, it doesn't have its full capabilities here, she explained. It's just a camera and a music player. There's not a whole lot to look at. That tiny thing is a camera? And it plays music? Winry squealed in excitement. I have to see how it works! Such a small, sleek, portable device! Minami began to sweat at the sight of the small screwdrivers that had appeared between Winry's fingers, as if they were claws. Wait, Minami didn't say you could take it apart, Al interjected. Winry gave Minami a pleading look. I promise I'll put it back together. I'm really careful when it comes to taking things apart and putting them back together. I mean, if I can repair an advanced ship made for space travel, certainly I can repair something as simple as a... What would you call it? A cell phone? Knock it off, will you, Winry? Ed sighed heavily. That phone thing is very important to Minami. Besides, you're supposed to be checking out my arm. Despite saying this, Ed was already back in his spot next to the workstation, Pinocchio looking over his automail leg. Sorry, but he's right, Minami said quietly, holding her phone to her chest. Right now, this is the only thing I have from home. Oh, right. Winry looked down, feeling guilty that she had asked in the first place. Ah, shoot. I'm sorry. Still, Minami felt bad for saying no and disappointing Winry. How about this? When I get my world back, I'll bring you one to take apart and not have to sweat putting it back together. Would that be okay? You mean it? Winry suddenly grabbed Minami's hands to hold with her own, stars shining in her eyes. Oh, thank you, Minami! You really are pure-hearted! Minami couldn't help but smile in response. Hey, weren't you going to be looking at your craftsmanship, Miss Mechanic? Ed asked impatiently. All right! Winry rolled her eyes and let go of Minami's hands to join her grandmother and inspect Ed's automail arm. Minami watched Winry and Pinocchio as they talked a bunch of mechanical jargon, questioning Ed about what he had been doing, as well as the automail's functionality. Want a tour of the gummy ship? Al offered, and Minami nodded to him. Sure. She followed the suit of armor inside the rocket ship, and she was quick to notice that it was rather spacious. There were 3 pilot seats in the cockpit, and behind them was a small living quarter, where there were 2 sets of bunk beds across from each other. The top bunks seemed to hold boxes full of what Minami assumed were rations and other inventory. She couldn't help but think of how strange and out of place it was for a world that seemed to be so far behind in technology to have something this advanced. Huh, she hummed aloud, still looking around. Minami pulled back a curtain of one of the I almost said bathroom. Minami pulled back the curtain of one of the bottom bunks to see that it had seemed to be already occupied. Not only were the sheets wrinkled, but there were also a couple stacks of books at the foot of the bed. She closed the curtain and investigated the other bottom bunk across the small walkway. "This'll be where you sleep," Al said, watching her as she sat down. "Seems cozy." Manami noticed a window, but its cover was shut. "Do these open? I mean, not totally open, but yeah." Al chuckled as Manami pushed the cover up and looked out the window, seeing Ed still with Winry and Panako below them. "Brother says that looking out into space is actually a pretty relaxing way to go to sleep. I wouldn't know, I'm afraid, but you could give it a try." Manami smiled a little. "Yeah, I'm looking forward to it." With that, she stood up from the bed and closed the curtain to the small bunk. "I just have one question." She looked up to the suit of armor. "This is a pretty interesting spaceship. Considering that you guys don't know what a cell phone is, how do you have the technology to make something like this? Like, what year is it here anyway?" "Well, this technology isn't from our world," Al answered. "We actually formed an alliance with another world who shared their gummy ship technology with us, and they taught us how we could utilize alchemy with it. Still, even we don't 100% understand it yet." Al paused, remembering Manami's other question. "Oh, the year? It's 1914. Why? What year is it in your world?" "Wow," Manami blinked. "In our world, it's 2019. "That's amazing!" Al exclaimed. "If your technology is that advanced, I could only imagine what new ways to utilize alchemy your world has uncovered in that time, or what new kinds of magic you've all mastered for that matter." "Actually," Manami rubbed the back of her head, "there isn't alchemy in our world. Well, nothing like what you have here anyway." "Really?" Al blinked. "Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure we just call it chemistry in my world. There's no flashy sparks or anything, though." Manami looked up and thought. "It's more like mixing different stuff in test tubes in a lab." At least, that was how she always thought chemistry was. That was a class that she would have had to take in high school, probably. "Huh." Al crossed his arms as he thought for a moment. "That is how alchemy kind of came to be, at least according to the older texts, before it was radically changed 400 years ago. There are rumors that it came from other worlds entirely. Considering that Brother and I have been searching for answers, we're hoping to find them as we explore new worlds." Manami offered him a small smile. "Yeah, I hope so too." We actually have a... Okay, alright, we have a blooper. Sorry, it's kind of unsafe, but Juicebox and I are funny. Anyway, Manami pulls back the curtain of one of the bottom bunks to see that it seems to be already occupied. Not only were the sheets wrinkled, but there was also a couple stacks of books at the foot of the bed. She then notices a box of tissues and a bottle of lotion next to the pillow, and then Manami quickly draws the curtain shut. Oh, anyway, alright, I think this is chapter 6, right? I think that is the reading for today. Yes. Okay, so that was 3 chapters. We did it! One must keep their skin lotions. Yeah, Solus, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Okay, so, alright. Let me go back to chapter 1 to show everybody who hasn't been here since the beginning the cover that I drew. It's actually kind of outdated now because, and it's something I actually need to change with the Kai scene. They actually have different keyblades now. Can I please just have... There we go. There we go. Okay. There we go. You still can't really see it because overlay kind of messes it up. But yeah! I drew this. But yeah, so Manami's Keyblade and Kai's Keyblade look different. I don't know if I have Kai's Keyblade. Oh shoot, I don't even think... How could I? Look! I have to redraw it. I want to commission somebody to draw this. Like, I have an artist who can draw in Nomura's style. And it's kind of like my dream, but man, it's gonna be expensive with this huge suit of armor. This is 4 full bodies. Like, I ain't gonna be cheap. Google, don't you mean Moogle? Sure, that is the correct answer. Hold on, let me pull up. I just like blanked. See if I can pull up the journal. I really not have it? Okay. I guess I don't have it. Yeah, maybe super expensive. Yeah, I know. It'll be okay though. I'll get it one day. One day. But yeah, okay. So now would be the time for any Q&A questions. I think there was something that I specifically wanted to mention other than the whole Keyblade thing. Does he ever get a phone? Who he? Kai? Oh, Solus, that is actually... Okay, so no, we do not explode a dog child. We will go more into it later. But I can say, you know, like, without worrying about it too much, the Nina incident has already happened in the Full Metal Alchemist timeline. So, roughly, you know... So, like, this is... at the point in Full Metal Alchemist where Ed is 15 and whatever. So everything that he did, you know, at the beginning of either series, you take your pick, you know, like Lior and Nina and all that stuff, that happened when he first joined the military at like 11. So all of those events had already happened. Yeah, we're not gonna blow up the dog girl in the fanfiction, sorry. But it will be brought up later. Here, let me, since we're here just hanging out, I guess I can pull up drawings. Sorry, I'm gonna get a bit of encoding overload. So I really want to pull up... I don't know if I have Kai's bad Keyblade. Bad Keyblade as in bad guy Keyblade, not... It's a good Keyblade. 1 second, sorry everybody. Resources. But yeah, to put in perspective, Juicebox and I have our own, like, server for this entire thing. And so we have, like, the section where we roleplay, resources, and then for our blooper section, that's, we call it joke play instead of roleplay. But let me... Oh, shoot. Wrong browser. I have to be in a specific browser. It's super top secret, everybody. We're blowing up that dog girl so badly she's gonna be blown up all over the place. Jeez, juice box. Good lord. Please let me continue with Google. Thanks. I just want to pull up the pictures of the Keyblades. If anybody else... I think Professor mentioned earlier something about, yes, to a degree, we are following both 2003 and Brotherhood plots. It depends which part that we're in, because this is going to be a multiple part series. We're looking at a 3-part series, so we're essentially going to have a Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, respectively. No spin-offs, no nonsense, it's whatever. I'll just put this music back on. Can I not rename? I would like to rename the name of this thing. Am I not allowed to rename this journal? Yes, we do not have a birth... Like, okay. How do I explain it? It's a really good question. How do I explain it? Everything is condensed to its own... So, like, we have characters that have existed before Minami and Kai in their time, but they're also part of the Full Metal canon. So it's like, whoa! Yeah, no recoded plotline, no. If anything, there's probably like touches of Birth by Sleep. There is a sprinkle of It's more like 358 over 2, more like 2 over 1. Like, we knocked this out, okay? It's combined with part 2, pretty much. I'm not telling you who, Professor. I mean, good guess. But, yeah, it's Mufasa. Okay, I have to share a different window. So let me do that really quick. Just to give y'all a perspective of how I organize this in a journal. Organize by title. Here we go. We got all this. Also, let me know, guys, if you can't really see it. Yeah, it's kind of looking silly. Hold on. This is what's important. Oh, okay. Woo. Okay. So anyway, we got our main characters, Minami Mitsuko and Kai Kuroshima. Literally everything down to the height, the birthday, things that they like and dislike, what their outfits are gonna look like later. And now we got team attacks that we will be going into later on. Like, look at all the work. There it is, Booster.
Dual wield.
Dual wield. Booster literally made me put that on. So, thank you, Booster. Everyone, thank Booster for that lovely thing. Alfonso. So yeah, we kind of, the way I organize this journal, this is
It's time to stop. It's time to stop, okay?
No, it's not.
No more.
No.
Where the f are your parents?
Eh,
Who are your parents?
eh,
I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop.
meh.
Go away, Frank. Thank you for the redeem. So this is roughly what we envisioned. My cursor is not captured here, but the picture. Ah, thank you for the bits, Juice Box. This is what Kishinewa looks like. This coast side town kind of deal. And then I summarize everything. Here are all the characters we run into. Oh, something I wanted to mention that no one asked about yet, but I should probably tell you. Okay, remember how I said earlier that 2003 and Brotherhood Full Metal is like kind of weaved together in this story? Yeah. So, did anybody catch how Rose, this was actually in the last reading, where Rose touched Minami's hand and felt a very strong power of light. This is because of Conqueror of Shambhala, where Noah had the fortune-telling ability by touching palms. And let's face it, Noah is basically Rose. So, that's why she has that power. I thought I would mention that. Oh, here's Minami's Keyblade. The Destined Heart. So surely Kai's Keyblade would be in here too, right? Right? I'm actually not sure. Hold on, I'm actually gonna go into my DMs with Juicebox real quick. Has file from me. Okay, I should probably type my name. Hello? Has file from Manam. Okay, I guess I'm not allowed to see the file from myself. Okay, thanks, Discord. Minami and Rose touched hands too? Wow, Minami's touching all the girls. Stop! Juicebox! Why? I'm so upset. It won't let me see the pictures that I sent. Okay, we are not gonna show Kai's cool Keyblade today. But anyway, maybe next time I should add it to the journal. Wow, we're here in Amestris. This is where we are right now. And here's everybody. Oh, wait. Probably I just gave y'all a spoiler. Uh-oh! That's okay. Yeah. So we will continue on. Oh, yeah. Where do you see that? I don't see that anywhere. You're crazy. You're crazy. Anyway, I think that's it. Unless if anybody has any other questions, but I'm gonna swing on back here to just chat. Hi, Binks. How you doing? Oi, just get. But yeah, hopefully you guys are liking the story we have so far. I'm glad I got to do a reading of it before my new work schedule started. Which I would like to, speaking of which, something I just found out today. So, with this new job coming up, my days off are supposed to be Tuesday and Wednesday, but apparently in my first week, they were like, yeah, we're having them start on Monday, so maybe we shouldn't, have them be off Tuesday and Wednesday. So I'll actually be working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and apparently I'm off Saturday. I don't know if I get another day off other than that. Maybe I'll get Saturday and Sunday off. That'd be cool. Go back Monday. That'd be sweet. That'd be chill. But yeah, so I will probably do a thing on Saturday at the very least. I will be taking next week off, which is why I'm going so heavy on the streams this week. Wow. That sounds annoying but expected, of course. Okay, who's streaming? I think it's about time we start rating somebody before I get caught with all this copyrighted music. I stopped caring. I really did. Okay. Let's raid Reducky. I haven't raided Reducky in a hot minute. But yeah, hopefully you guys like what's going on. I will be continuing. I'm really, you know, my throat hurts by the end of it, but I like reading 3 chapters at a time. It feels like I get a lot done. So next time, we read to chapter 6, so next time we will be reading chapter 7, 8, and 9. Sounds annoying, but Bo's uneventful journey. God. So, what day is it? Monday? Alright, so I'm off tomorrow. I'm gonna take a break. But I'll be back Wednesday for a double date with, well, maybe not a double date, but I will hang out with Yuno and play Snipper Clips at 4. And then I'm gonna hang out with the Chris Witt at 8 o'clock. And we're gonna play a game that you guys aren't allowed to know yet. That's why it's a bunch of question marks on the schedule. I actually didn't know what it was until, like, today. He made it a surprise for me, too. So, it's okay. It'll be fun. Was the cringe fun? I'm glad you enjoyed it. Do I have anything coming up? I don't think so. I mean, okay, I do for the rest of the week, but I will talk about Friday on Wednesday and Saturday on Friday and Sunday on Saturday. You get it. You guys get it. Okay, I'm tired. I'm gonna go rest my voice. Let Reducky know that she's been hit by a Minami tsunami. If you got those subs, throw those emotes. Long live Murder Poo, I guess. God, y'all have a good night, okay? I'm gonna turn off this copyrighted music. I'm gonna bring in my music. We're gonna da 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 da. Okay. Alright, I love you guys. I'll see you on Wednesday. I'll see y'all later.